Hi everyone, so I figured since I'm doing a lot of binding, I might as well do a video because I've had people ask me to before. So I'm going to show you how I put the binding on. This is the Lowland Kids Summer Sleep Set. This is the top. So I've got a stack of 2Ts here. This is the back and this is the front. I already have all the binding cut out to what the pattern suggested, so the straps and then the front neckline and the back neckline. So what I'm gonna do is just take my so up here, this is 2T, so this is my front, so I'm gonna take them and I'm gonna line them up right here, and then I'll take my backs and I'm going to line up all those binding pieces on my back necklines right here. So I'm going to do that real quick and then I will be back. Okay, so now I have my binding lined up on my front necklines and my back necklines. I just wanted to mention that I'm sewing several sets. That's why I have so many. And if you look over here, that's why I have so many straps. And binding for the necklines. These are all different sizes. So I have a lightweight rib knit as the main fabric, and then I am using double brushed poly for the binding. So you can pin my light. You can pin the fabric if you want. I'm not going to. It's easier for me to knot and it's quicker. But if you're more comfortable, then just pin this, stretch it from this end to that end. You want right sides together. So obviously I have right side up on the rainbow, and then this is the right side for the double brushed poly, and it's down. So my two right sides are together. I'm just going to serge all of these together. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so like I said, right sides together, and if you need to pin, go ahead and pin them. I'm not going to. I always make sure my knife is up before I start. I'm going to start a little bit just to get the thread in there, and then I'm going to take my binding and stretch it to the end, so that way it fits across the whole neckline. Okay, so I have all of those serged on. This is what it'll look like whenever you have it done. This is my back and this is my front. So it looks like that. I've got my two right sides together, and of course it will flip up that way. So that's what we're looking like right now for all of those. Sorry if you hear my little one in the background. Okay. Now that we have the necklines serged on, we're going to iron them. I wanted to apologize if this video seems a little choppy. I'm sewing a lot of them at once, and I'm just recording as the steps as I get to them, so hopefully I can edit it so it flows really well. But anyway, so I'm gonna take my seam here and make sure that it's flipped up towards the binding. Make sure you pay attention to the fabric you're using and the heat on your iron, so you don't want to melt it. This polyester can melt. Alright, so after I have my seam pretty flat there, I'm going to take the binding and I'm going to flip it to cover that seam. Just enough to cover it. And then I'm going to iron it again. I think this is kind of the most important step to getting a really neat, clean binding. I like to crease it pretty well, so that way whenever I go over to top stitch this down, I already have it lined up pretty well. Okay, so there's that, and then if you flip it, that's what it looks like on the other side, and then I'm going to top stitch down to complete it. After you've ironed it, so here's what my back neckline looks like. I'm going to cover stitch it. You can use a regular sewing machine. You can use a twin needle. Just make sure you're using a stretch stitch because you don't want your stitching to pop. So what I do is try to line up my edge as much as I can because I want the stitching to just cover right there. I'm using the Brother Cover Stitch 2340. And just make sure you're starting at the very edge there so you don't miss any of it. The slower the better, honestly. I pull on my strings back here a little bit because I don't have a lot of overhang on my binding. Just to get started, then I can let that go. Alright, all the way to the edge. Make sure my needles are up. Out. So there's the front of it and the back. Okay, so I have my armbands here. I've already cut them to what the chart says in the pattern. And then I have marked where my middle is. So I have a size 6-7 right here. I already have my neck bands on. So the chart says that a 6-7 has a 5-inch gap. So what I'm going to do is measure 2.5 over this way and 2.5 over that way to put my my front and back on, so then that way I'll have a 5-inch gap total. Bear with me as I try to do this with one hand. So like I said, I'm going to go over 2.5. Let me see, is that 2? That's 2. 2.5. And then I am just going to clip it. If I can. Like I said, I have one hand, so I'm going to go back over and make sure that they're clipped better. But so you can see that your arm, your binding needs to line up to the top of this. It's going to be a little bit short because you're going to stretch your binding. Make sure that your right sides are together. And then again, I'm going to go 2.5 over and pin it there. Then I'm going to take my other side, 2.5 and pin it, 2.5 and pin it. So then I'll have my 5-inch gap here, and then I'll be able to attach the arm binding. So this is what it will look like when you have it right side up. This is a 9 to 12 month. I know I just showed you a 6 to 7, so this gap looks a lot smaller than what the other one was, but I just wanted to show you this is what I meant. So my right side of my binding is on the right side of my fabric, and this edge is lined up with this edge, so then that way whenever I serge, I'm going to be able to flip this around just like we did with this top piece. So that is what you will look like, and you will stretch this to the end and start to serge all the way around. Okay, I'm not really sure what happened to the other video that I thought I took. I wanted to show you what the arm binding looked like after it was serged on. It just looks exactly like the neck binding did. We ironed it over, and now in this video I'm going through and top stitching with my cover stitch. You can see that's a much better release than the first time, and now it's done. This is what it will look like after you have serged on your armbands and then folded over and top stitched. So and when you flip it around, that's what you have. And then, of course, from here, you'll put them right sides together, match up your little corners there, and sew them down. And there you have it. That's how I do the binding, and that's how I do binding on pretty much everything.